Hello and welcome to another episode of Part in the Dust, Dusting Off Construction with Caitlin and Jillian. We're your hosts, Caitlin
and Jillian.
and we're back with our guest, Shir Rustici, this time dusting off the topic of empowering women in the AEC manufacturing industry. Our last episode with you, we discussed her journey entering the AEC industry and to becoming a global product manager at Symetri and being an Autodesk expert elite. We highly recommend you check out that episode. There's lots of nuggets of wisdom. It was really great. So for those of you who are starting at this episode, which I don't know why you didn't start at the last episode, Shir, could you please reintroduce yourself for our listeners?
Hi, everybody. I'm Shir Rustici. I am an Autodesk expert elite and global product manager, as Caitlin said. My background is in architecture. I went to architecture school and I worked as a BIM manager for many, many years, doing, like BIM implementation and management, as well as being a dynamo. I always refrain from the word expert because as we talked about the last episode with imposter syndrome, I always feel like you can never learn enough about dynamo and there's always different ways to do things, but I take that as you will, and that's a little bit about me.
That just made me think of a SpongeBob episode where he was number one, and just thinking like you're out to your grave, still not calling yourself an expert, but he was number one. That's just the imagery that came to my mind.
I love that SpongeBob episode.
Yeah, so great. Only dating us, because I'm sure half the listeners probably have no idea what we're talking about, but it's okay. It's a fun reference for those of you who know it. First question today, what are you most passionate about at your work?
So I love experimenting with technology, which is kind of what got me here in the first place. I love learning new things, and I definitely have time to do that because that now is part of my job, to research different technologies, learn them, listen to people about using them and how to incorporate it into our software. So that's always really fun. I'm learning about different innovations, different innovative ways to be productive or increase productivity, which I love to do. And then obviously teach people how to do that. I love teaching. But the biggest thing is I love to travel. I love traveling and seeing the world, learning different cultures, learning about, different or having different experiences. And I get to do that with my work now. I travel quite a bit for work, which can get tiresome, but in all, it's part of what I love to do. So
yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I also love traveling. It's a good time. I get to do it here a bit, which is great, and I look forward to continuing to travel personally and professionally.
Yeah, I know. Last episode, Shir, you mentioned that you lived in Germany. Where's your favorite place that you've traveled to for work or otherwise?
So I do travel a lot to the Nordics, so like Sweden, and that was gorgeous, beautiful. The food was really good, but my favorite spot so far that I've been to was Vienna. It's just such a gorgeous city. It has so many old buildings, churches, and it wasn't really destroyed in World War II, which a lot of that part of Europe was. So it was really beautiful to see it, and I loved the people there. So overall, it was a great trip. Although I have to say, the nicest people I've ever met, Irish people.
Nice.
They are by far the nicest I've ever met. So
that's really fun. I also feel like as being educated in architecture, of course, you just appreciate buildings in a whole other way than like the regular person walking down the street. So I'm sure traveling and seeing all of the architecture and just seeing old architecture, new architecture, and seeing how everything's transformed has been really exciting. And so would you say Vienna is also like your favorite place of viewing buildings, or would you say there's another location that had even more beautiful buildings?
I would say in terms of like the juxtaposition, like probably maybe hold on, why is it always these cities? Venice is probably one of the most beautiful in terms of the building typology or like the whole landscape, because you get like this backdrop of Italy, which is gorgeous, but then all the fact that like everything is around water and the canals and the transportation is different, and you have all these like old historic buildings with like a lot of new art juxtaposed between it is really nice.
Yeah, so also with traveling, of course, you have to talk to lots of people, and you're kind of just growing network and growing awareness for lots of things. So, are there any like groups that you're part of to help develop your network professionally and grow awareness of women in AEC?
I mean, yeah, like I think I mentioned this in the last episode. The Women in BIM organization
Yep.
I've been trying to become a part of more. I actually joined them, and they aren't that big in the US yet. They're really big in Australia and Europe. And so they're still new here, and they have this mentorship program. So last year I applied as a mentee,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was an amazing experience. And this year I applied as a mentor, and I was actually just matched with my mentee. So I'm really excited
That's
about
very
just
exciting.
that experience. And so, and then every time I attend a conference, I always look for the women's group. So, like at um, New York Build and the other Build events, they always have like a women in construction meetup or a women in architecture meetup at like AIA, for example. So always trying to attend those meetups so I can hear the stories of other women in other industries. For example, like at the women in construction meetup, you know, I wouldn't say like I'm in construction, I'm like construction adjacent. And
Mm-hmm.
so hearing women who are like working on site in these different industries who are, you know, maybe even, working on site in terms of um, wearing hard hats and working in construction, hearing their stories and seeing how relatable it was, even though we're kind of in different sects of the industry, we can relate to one another and we can help one another was really inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've definitely had a really similar experience in joining the precast community just a couple of years ago of being able to talk to all sorts of people, but particularly women. When you talk to them, you realize that you have a lot of the same experiences, even though your experiences are also extraordinarily different. And I think it's really eye-opening just how much everyone is impacted by just the world in general and their careers. So obviously, being a woman in a predominantly male field leads to the need for some sort of diversity groups like women in construction or women in BIM. How did you first end up getting involved in DEI in general?
So I first got really involved with my first speaking engagement actually at AU. I submitted a proposal for a panel about kind of women in the industry or women empowerment or what it's like to be a woman in the industry. And that kind of just skyrocketed from there because I started getting more involved because I was really passionate about it. So I started joining more groups and talking to more women, but it really started from like that one event where like I had wanted to talk about it before, but I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to get involved, and that kind of then gave me the confidence to get more involved and attend more of these conferences or more of these meetups to talk to more women and just I saw the benefit of sharing my experience and I wanted to talk to more women about their experiences.
Nice. Yeah, and I know in the last episode you mentioned um, when you're joining your group, when you're becoming product manager, product owner, you were the only woman joining the table. So obviously that kind of can make you feel a little bit isolated in the workplace. So what do you recommend for people who do feel alone or isolated in the workplace when they're trying to, break standards and join groups that they're not already represented in?
So definitely don't feel like you have to keep quiet. I would say talk, be more vocal and talk it out. There are going to be allies, there men that you work with that want to support you, want to help you out. A lot of times people don't know what they don't know, right? So
Yeah.
I've become more vocal within my own organization and I try to approach it with that approach. Like I don't want to scold anybody. I approach it with like, they're just unaware. So I try to educate people and be like, hey, have you looked at our hiring practices? Do we have any hiring practices that are geared towards diversity? Is this a goal for us? Trying to understand the organization's goal, the team's goal, and be like, when I come to a meeting, if you're feeling like people are talking over you, um, if you're feeling unheard, I would go to somebody that you feel comfortable with and express that to them, because a lot of times they're willing to help you. I've talked to, for example, I had this experience when I was working in Germany, and I was the only woman that was constantly attending these meetings in a room full of, I think, like 15 other men. And I was constantly being talked over all the time. There was also like a language issue, which was even harder. And we're supposed to be speaking in English all the time because it was supposed to be a diverse team of people from other countries, but they were always speaking, in German. And I ended up like approaching my coworker about this and saying, this is how I feel. I feel like, they're kind of trying to not include me and and he stood up for me every time from moving on from that. Like, because it almost took me saying it for him to see it. And from then on, things improved, they got better. He helped, other people kind of recognize when they're not, doing the things they're supposed to. And so being more vocal about it and approaching the team that you feel comfortable with is really going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I've seen some of my past work experiences. This didn't happen to me, but I saw a lot of my upper management coworkers having trouble at a male dominated table, and they weren't quiet, but they would still just kind of get shut down and not taken seriously. And I know it was a huge struggle for them to get really anything done in the workplace. So while fortunately, Shir, you had a great experience there, I do know, unfortunately, there are still a lot of situations where women still, even if they're at the table, they're not taken seriously enough to get their jobs done, which is highly unfortunate. And I do hope for everything to get better across every industry, as time goes on.
Yeah.
So have you kind of like met with any other people who are also DEI advocates and interested in inclusion, and kind of what were those meetings like and having those conversations with others like you?
So that's definitely the case. I met people in my organization and others, but I find that speaking to people in HR actually has not like in my HR, but generally people who work in HR has been really beneficial, because they know a lot of like, the practices that you're supposed to implement in different organizations, how to increase diversity without, making a huge impact, or like making a negative impact, I guess I could say. Like my husband works in HR. I have a lot of friends who work in HR, and I kind of, whenever I was experiencing things, I would always go to them like, hey, my team doesn't have a lot of men, or sorry, doesn't have a lot of women. And what can my organization do to mitigate that or help improve that? What practices can they implement to increase that over time? And so really understanding that from an HR perspective of the different uh, practices that they can implement, or even, creating groups within your organization to give people space to feel heard and that they have a voice, was really important. So I feel like that was the most beneficial.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense. Speaking with HR, because that's part of their role, is to make sure that everything is equal and balanced, and everybody's getting represented and heard and understood in the workplace. So we also know that you have a personal brand. You've been developing it for a while, and you've had you're doing a lot of initiatives in order to keep growing your message and sharing it, and all of the above, all of what a personal brand does. So we know that it helps elevate yourself as well as the company that you work for. So what are the major components that make up your personal brand?
Yeah, so this took me a long time to think about, because I feel like, and in a sense, everyone already has a personal brand. You might not know what it is yet, but you might have like a nickname that people call you, or doing different things like that. And I had to think about this a lot. I guess my nickname in my industry is sheer force, because whenever I explain to people, people always ask, "Oh, well, how do you pronounce your name?" I'm like, "Sheer, like sheer force." Plus, I worked at a structural engineering firm, so that's like kind of where it started from. But um, thinking about how to then translate a brand into something that's actually like tangible, I kind of rethought of some things and thought about, again, this goes back to like what I'm passionate about or like what I like to do, which is about technology and about women empowerment. So when thinking about creating a brand, which is now I've created this like AEC Tech Girl as like my YouTube channel and my Instagram and what I'm, trying to grow, that's really where that stemmed from, is what I want to teach people and what I want to talk about. And so I talk about technology and I talk about being a woman and helping other women out. So that's kind of where the AEC Tech Girl. And then when thinking about your brand, color is really important. That's what I hear from a lot of people. That's what people have told me. So I was like, okay, what is going to be my brand color? What do I want to represent? And I ended up going pink. Like I wanted to embrace femininity because I feel like for so long, especially in a male dominated field, you kind of try to blend in. And also being the only girl growing up with, brothers, um, I always wanted to feel included. So I didn't want to always express that femininity. And I tried to like, I always thought, oh, pink, that's too girly. But I think now in like this new, I guess, I call it my feminine era. I'm totally trying to embrace it because it is really, I mean, who I am at the end of the day. And so I'm like diving into the pink and trying, as Dr. Seuss says, or really, because I was like, oh, I wanted to say this quote, but I had to look it up because I know it from Amanda Bynes's "Oh, What a Girl Wants" movie, but it's actually a Dr. Seuss quote, which is, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" So take that.
Yeah, that's great. So, at least from my perspective and my thoughts about my own personal brand, a lot of it is to build my career and get my name out there and start having those connections that you've already talked about. How has that impacted your career or your connections to have a personal brand as active as you do?
That it was exactly the reason I wanted to start it, actually. I wanted to do exactly that, which is kind of just grow my network, get more recognition in the industry, have more freedom in a way to, know that I have the skill set, and that people are aware of that. So it kind of gives me the freedom to, um, do my own thing when I want to. And so having the personal brand showed me actually how much connection is out there. There's so many people who are doing the same thing. Like you talk about what groups I'm part of. I think like content creation in and of itself, or content creation within our industry, is a group in and of itself. So it's connecting me to so many other people who are doing similar things, who are trying to grow their brand and do this, create different content, to whether that be just to teach people or talk about technology or talk about our industry in different ways, has really opened me up to people all over the world, like, connecting with people in Europe or Australia, New Zealand, even in the US and South America and Canada. And so putting yourself out there, and that's probably the scariest part. That was my biggest hurdle, is like, okay, I just have to take the leap, put myself out there, and there's always a fear of, that was my biggest fear, is like the negative comments or like the negativity that might come. But what I've experienced is so much positivity actually. And so you just have to take that leap, and you'll be able to, it will open you up to be able to connect to so many people because more people will see you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm at a very early point in I finally came up with my concept for my personal brand. So now it's like putting in the work to have all the leadway of what I need in order to really just bounce off from that starting point. So I look forward to that, but I'm also very scared of the global outreach and just getting my name out there and just having people know more about me as an individual. So it's very exciting and also very scary, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and
And
don't think you need to have everything figured out.
oh, for
Like,
sure.
it can change over time. Just start. And I keep saying that, knowing that I didn't do that myself because I think I thought about it for like 6 months before I actually started. But
Yep.
but hindsight 2020, I wish I started earlier. So just bite the bullet and start.
Yep, I've definitely started like the phone calls to talk to people, and now it's just like I want to develop a guide of some sort in order to share that and then have that be my starting off point. So
I
we
mean,
gotta
you're
work on
already
that.
doing it with this podcast.
Exactly. So I also know, as you just mentioned, we have our podcast, and we know you have your YouTube channel, as you had mentioned. So how did you decide to start that, and like, if you want to give everybody an overview, like of what the focus of your YouTube channel is, how they can get to it, of course, because we want you to be able to have people to watch it. So yeah. So do you want to elaborate on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so the YouTube channel is called AEC Tech Girl. You could just search that. And it's about technology for architecture, engineering, and construction. And a lot of it is about, me attending conferences, me going to different events, and also tutorials on different technologies. I'm starting off with a Dynamo tutorial. So my channel is still fairly new. I'm still in the first quarter of it. So we're about to hit 3 months at the end of this month, or the first quarter that it's out. And I, started it because I was really looking at a way to kind of do something outside of my 9 to 5 job. I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel for probably a few years now, just seeing some of the other people out there, being a YouTuber or a YouTube user myself, because I'm a very visual person. So I was constantly always going to YouTube to learn different things, watch what people are doing. Every time there was an issue that I had that I couldn't figure out how to do it, I would go and find a video that taught me how to do it. And so that was really inspirational for me. And I wanted to help other people. Like I said, I really like teaching and helping others. So I've been thinking about it for a while, but was always scared to do it. And then I got my mentor last year, and she has really helped me figure out, and that wasn't like the first option of things to do. We really were talking about, what can I do outside of my 9 to 5? How can I grow my career? How can I, do something and kind of take a risk? And at first it was like, well, should I start a side hustle? Should I start my own business? Should I do this? Should I do that? And we ended up at this point where, she was like, we talked through the option of starting a YouTube channel. And it also stemmed from, me becoming part of it is like all the stars aligning, or like all the paths crossing, where I became an expert elite as well. And I met a lot of other expert leaders who also have YouTube channels, like Dana, who has the Dynamo channel, and the 3D Tech channel, and a few other people. And so meeting them and seeing what they do really inspired me. And then I just kind of was like, all right, once I like had it in my mind that I was going to do it, I then started telling people that I was going to do it. And that really was like, I couldn't turn back from there. Cause I was like, once I tell people, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do this one thing, and it's going to launch on this day. Like that. I mean, I did that on purpose because it
Yep.
kind of helped me accountable to doing it. And the rest is history. And I'm trying to not get too focused on, like the subscription amount or the growth of it. Like I would like it to grow organically and just hopefully help people learn the different technology is really the goal.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same with the podcast. We're like, we're gonna do it. It's gonna launch in January. It's gonna happen. And here it's happening. And then it was like, all right, we gotta get guests, because we can't really keep running the podcast without getting guests. So that's been, I feel like, for me personally, the hardest part is asking people for their time. I greatly appreciate you giving us your time today. And for the last episode, um, but yeah, once you put it out in the world, it's gonna happen. So I am also a firm believer of saying it out loud, telling other people, and then you're kind of shoehorned into it, which is nice because it gets you motivated to do it because people are relying on you. So what advice do you have for others who want to share their ideas and experiences? I know you had your mentor who helped you, come up with the YouTube channel idea. Um, So besides having a mentor, because I feel like everybody would love to have a mentor, if you don't have one yet, what would be your advice?
So I would say, and because since I've started doing this, I've watched a lot of, other content creators and what they're doing and like advice that they've given. And I think one of the biggest advice that I kind of took away from this is nobody cares what you're doing. And that was the biggest like aha moment for me that, yeah, I should just do it because nobody cares. Your family isn't going to care. Your coworkers, they don't really care. Your audience, they don't care until like you actually grow a following. So when you're starting off, don't be too critical of yourself. Just start doing things. If you like making videos, make videos. If you like talking, do a podcast. If you like writing, start a blog. There's room for everybody. That it's not, I don't think anything is too saturated. Like, and let your personality shine, and just start. It could be small. It could be, and another statistic that somebody told me, and I don't know if it's true, so probably you should fact check me, but they say that 99% of the people who start don't even get to the 10th, whatever it is, episode, article, blog post. So once you hit your 11th, you've already beat 99% of the people out there. So,
Wow.
and it's not that hard of a goal to reach. That was like my first goal was to just start and get to 10. And I just did my 10th video this week. So, or my 11th video this week. So yeah, so I feel like that was a big milestone for me.
How ironic would it be if this is episode 10? I know we're almost there.
We are.
This is either 9 or 10, maybe. Probably
Yeah, I
not
think
11,
it's
but it's either 9 or 10. So that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll publish a different one and scratch this out. Make this number 11.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's great advice. And I don't think I'm going to fact check you on that because I like those odds. So we're just going to roll with them and say that it's a fact coming from this podcast.
Yeah, I'd way rather it was 11 than 1,000 because I feel like 11 is something achievable. If you set out to just do the first 11, then you get into the habit of things and you might start feeling better about yourself, a little less self-conscious, a little more like no one cares. And it's really just for you at that point. So I like those numbers. I like those odds. So I think we'll keep it in. Yeah. So, Shir, of course, you're in the AEC industry and you have this personal brand kind of running alongside your career. How do you feel that your work and your impact in the industry is going to continue on from here out?
Yeah. So I'm, you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And I'm going to, even though it's a lot of work to both have your normal job, your 9 to 5, as I'm sure you guys are aware of, and have this kind of side project or brand that you're trying to work on. But I hope that, I can continue doing both of them and that I can continue to help others with either like sharing my experiences or just, being somebody that they can relate to also just like teaching new skills to new people coming into the industry. And so I hope that not only can I help people with my day job and creating products that help people be more efficient, but also with my YouTube, teaching people different things, whether that is, about conferences, about being a woman in the industry, or about the technical side of things like Dynamo or M360 or ACC and Revit, that I just can continue to do that and help more people along the way.
Awesome. I also wanted to quickly ask you something came back to my brain. And you've spoken at AU, which is Autodesk University. And I know you've submitted other prompts for other talks. What are some of the other things that you do want to talk about at Autodesk University, whether you're able to or not this year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get any of my proposals accepted this year, which I was really bummed about. But
it was a tough competition this year because we also didn't get accepted.
Yeah,
so.
I'm an optimist. So I always turn around and say, I think it's for the best. I actually have a lot going on this year with AU, with like being an expert elite. I'm also on the AU advisory council this year. So I'm helping to like actually make an impact on it. I'm also a speaker mentor, so I'm mentoring other speakers, and then I have like my Symetri job, and we're gonna have a booth there and everything. So I already have a lot on my plate for AU, and I'm hoping that maybe this is a blessing that I don't have more things. So I'm just gonna think of it that way. But I also wanted to talk about, just um, dynamo and automations, and I'm really like into obsessively talking about like how the Revit API came to be created and how they're creating different APIs for different things like Forma, and how they all connect in this like Autodesk ecosystem, and how you can utilize these things to be more efficient. And I had some submissions on that didn't get accepted. And then I also had a submission about the female or the future leadership um, of women in the industry, and how, technology has opened up so much more opportunities for women in leadership, because a lot of these roles are so new to the industry, and it gives us an opportunity to grow as leaders without having those biases that typical leadership roles in the industry have. So, but it didn't get accepted, so we'll see what happens at AU, but I'm still excited to go.
Nice.
Yeah,
Maybe next year.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
sure that
next
people still want to hear about those things, even if it's not going to be a room full of people. So I guess if you see Shira at AU, bother her on those topics.
Oh yes, please bother me. I love that. I love talking about these things.
That's awesome.
So, what do you have like planned next for yourself? You have all these major initiatives. You just told us everything that's on your daily plate. But what do you have planned?
Uh, I try not to plan too ahead because life is crazy and you never know what's going to happen. But as far as like my personal brand goes, I am trying to like another, I guess, tip is like with every step, I'm trying to learn something new and expand it. So I recently added like an Instagram page, but I also and like you said, getting more people. So I want to do more collabs. Um, and collaborate with other content creators or YouTubers, just to talk to them and hear about what they're doing. So I'm trying to expand more on that, and also maybe grow to other platforms. Maybe even creating a website for myself. We'll see.
It's pretty exciting. I know that I always have some sort of grand plan for myself, and every month it gets slated and started again. So I love the don't plan too far in advance, but also have those goals and ambitions that can happen at any time.
Yeah. I'm also doing construction on my house right now, or about to start it. So that's a whole other side project. And any other tech nerds out there, I actually did model my entire house in Revit and plan out my entire construction in Revit, but
No big deal.
Yeah.
So, do you have any like final snippets of advice for individuals trying to break into this industry and increasing inclusion?
So I would say if you're trying to break into the AEC industry, is definitely, talk to people within the industry. Networking is the biggest thing. I think I always before, the last couple of years, I took kind of networking for granted and I didn't put myself out there. But networking is really important because you'll meet so many people who are willing to help you, who want to help you, and you'll get exposed to others in the industry that you can ask questions to about, how to grow and how to learn, and how to make changes. And just there's so many niches. Like, find your niche. That has been the most impactful for me, is I found the niche and I just like continue to like dive deeper into like the niche that I enjoy, which is, technology for architects, and even further in that, developing technology for architects. So it just keeps getting more niched, I guess you could say. And that really provides you a lot of value because then there's less and less people who can do what you can do. Um, and in terms of, creating inclusion or increasing inclusion, it's just you being you and coming into the industry is promoting inclusion. So don't be afraid to dive into an industry in which you don't see anyone who looks like you, because you're now setting the path for the next generation or somebody else who thinks that they can't do it, but they'll see you and know that they can.
Yeah. I also actually have one final question about networking. So, I personally have an issue where I'll go to events by myself, so I don't have anybody. And breaking into seeing like little groups of 3 or 4 people, I always want to go over there and chat with them, but I'm still working up the confidence to go over there. do you have any recommendations on how to just get in there and network especially when you're just kind of like by yourself at this entire big event?
Yes, I do go to events by myself quite a bit, and that has been really difficult. And it's almost like I have to turn on my alter ego persona. And I basically like just take a deep breath and I say, okay, all right, you're now outgoing Sheer, and you're just going to dive in, and you aren't going to care what anyone thinks. And most of the time, everyone is actually really open, and they're not as clicky as you might think. And they are really open. So I just like approach a group and I, ask them. A big thing is like having a few questions that you can ask people. Like I just walk in and I kind of like, oh, hey, like, how are you guys enjoying the conference? Do you like the conference? Or if it's a specific meetup, or like, have you been here before? Asking them, about the city that you're in, or whether, like the last conference I was at, the AA conference, I was like, oh, are you actually from DC? Did you travel here? Just like kind of openers like that really help to, break in, and just like having kind of a few of those questions. It's, at the end of the day, it's all like dating.
Yeah.
It might be a little awkward, and you just have to sometimes brush it off. But most times when I try to engage people, even in a group, like people are really engaging and encouraging. And sometimes I'll even throw the tactic of like, oh, like, don't I know you? Haven't I seen you somewhere before? Sometimes I really haven't, but like, um, that kind of also is like, oh, like, have you been to this conference? And sometimes I actually have, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there too. Like,
Like,
so,
oh yeah, we were at the same table. I completely forgot.
and the more you network like this just happened at the last conference. Like I went to the Pratt alumni networking event and I talked to a bunch of people, and I went by myself. I didn't know anyone there. Um, and I ended up knowing one person there, but most people who attended actually didn't know anybody, and they came by themselves. So that was a really great opportunity. And then at a different happy hour the next day, I ended up running into a girl or woman, sorry, that I met at that, and we started chatting, and she had brought a bunch of people. So it was like, the networking kind of at its finest, as I say, like how that unfolded, because I was bold in one place, and then I was able to transition that relationship that I built there to another event, and it kind of goes from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It was the true net effect of networking.
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, I think that's all the questions that I have. Jillian, do you have any?
I do not have any more questions.
All right, Shir, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with anybody?
Just be bold and don't be scared.
Awesome. Put on a outgoing Shir face, outgoing you face, or you're just outgoing now when you go out.
Yeah.
So yeah, once again, thank you, Shir, for being here today again with us, speaking and sharing more tidbits of information. I think everything again was very beneficial, and I look forward to everybody listening to today's episode. So yes, thank you, listeners, for your time today. Make sure you like and subscribe, and to get notified on our latest episodes, because I know you're waiting for every single one. And if you've listened to a few and you've enjoyed them, please be sure to rate us or leave us a comment to let us know what you'd like to hear about or what we can improve. And again, give us a share. Make sure other people get to hear what we have to say. We hope that it's beneficial to you. We find it beneficial to us. Jillian and I are always here just learning from our guests. So if we're learning, I'm sure somebody else is learning. And we make this for you. So with that, we'll catch you next time. Thanks.